Hello and welcome to Marvel in a Minute presented by Crushing Comics. I'm your host Peter Marinari and here's what we're here to do. I'm going to spend 1 minute for each of the Marvel comic books that are in continuity that were out this past week on September 5th. And I'm going to, in that minute, do something. I'm either going to review them, react to them, just do a minute of incoherent screaming. I'm not sure yet because I don't script it ahead of time. But I have read all these comic books and I want to give you a chance to put your finger on the pulse of what's going on with the Marvel line right now. Maybe it's because you're not reading any comics, maybe because you're reading some of them and not all of them, or maybe you just don't know where to step in. Well, I'm not necessarily going to catch you up on every one of them, but hopefully I'll give you a sense of where they currently stand and if they're any fun to read. There were 20 books out from Marvel this week, so I don't even know if I have enough voice in my body or, digital videotape to get through them all in a minute each, but we're going to do our best. For each book, I'll let you know who the creative team is, and then the clock will start. Speaking of which, I'm at just about a minute on the clock right now, so let's begin. Ant-Man and the Wasp, issue number 5, is the final issue of this 5-issue limited series. It was written by Mark Waid with art from Javier Garron, color art from Israel Silva, letters from Joe Caramagna, and a cover by David Nakayama. Here we go. This series puts together Scott Lang as the Ant-Man with Nadia Pym, Hank Pym's daughter, as the Wasp. Waid had written Nadia Pym and actually introduced her in Avengers, but I really felt like her character is mostly defined by Jeremy Whitley and his Unstoppable Wasp. That Waid does an okay job with her here, but as a finale, this is not super satisfying for me, although it looks amazing and has for the entire issues. All 5. The reason it doesn't really satisfy me is because it's a lot of wacky montage followed by a lot of super science, which is cool and actually somewhat grounded in real science, but it doesn't solve a mystery in a way that we could keep up with as a reader or anticipate as a reader. And so it's kind of just like watching the wasp say, Eureka, Eureka, Eureka. It ends having given us a chance to see these two second-generation characters interact with each other and form a little bit of a friendship, but ultimately inessential for both of them, and not anything I would say anybody who's a fan of either of the characters really needs to go back and read. Again, it looks super awesome. The art has been incredible throughout, and the middle issues were really good for a laugh. So definitely some enjoyment, but not anything I really think anybody needs to go back and pick up. Asgardians of the Galaxy #1 is written by Colin Bunn with art from Matteo Lally, color art from Federico Blee, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover from Dale Kuhn and Jason Keith. This issue, wow, there is a lot going on. I think the first thing you need to know is that it is somewhat of a continuation of one of the characters and some of the themes of Colin Bunn's Fearless Defenders, which came out a long time ago now. It was at the beginning of 2013. It wasn't really a Defenders comic. It was Misty Knight and Valkyrie as a team-up. We have Valkyrie here, but she's teaming up with a lot of Asgardian-oriented characters. There's a lot of big MacGuffin things happening. It's a little bit tangential to Thor, a little bit tangential to Infinity War, and it's fun. If you like these characters like Executioner, like the Destroyer, like Angela, like Frog Thor, you're probably going to have some satisfaction. I do like a lot of those characters. There's 2 specific things I want to point out though. So one is that it has a huge final page reveal that I'm not going to spoil for you here, though everybody's talking about it. And I don't know how much I trust this series to deal with that character or Bunn to succeed with that character. It's a character super cherished by the internet. Oh my god, I only have 5 seconds left. The other thing is, I don't really like the colors. Federico Blee has not been great in a lot of comic books. I don't like the way he colors faces. Really dragged this down for me. That's all I've got. I'm definitely going to keep reading this. I really like Angela. I mean, I'm reading everything, but I'm going to continue enjoying reading it, at least for a few issues, but I have some skepticism about that final page reveal. Astonishing X-Men issue number 15 was written by Matthew Rosenberg with pencils from Greg Land and Neil Edwards, inks from Jay Leaston, color art from Frank Dermata, and letters from Clayton Cowles. The cover is by Greg Land with Frank Dermata. This new arc of Astonishing X-Men is following this kind of sad sack, but now happy-go-lucky Havoc, as he tries to assemble a team around him that aren't quite the X-Men, but are a lot of X-Men that are kind of on the outs with the other X-Men and with themselves. They very quickly run into some trouble with, are they Reavers or are they the US government? And so they're kind of dealing with that external conflict, but also the internal conflict of are they even superheroes right now? They certainly aren't X-Men, as Warpath continues to remind him he's been sent by Kitty Pryde to basically be cease and desist with this using our name and bringing bad press to the X-Men. Havoc can't really seem to do anything right though, and that's really a theme of the characters here. Havoc, Beast, Dazzler, Colossus. These are X-Men who have been having trouble doing anything right over the past couple of years, and so this feels like a little bit of X-Men the Misfits. Look, I don't really think it deserves the Astonishing X-Men name, which tends to be reserved for big creators, but I do think it's an interesting run, and I think if you love some of those characters, particularly Havoc, Warpath, or Dazzler, it's probably worth tuning in. If you want to hear me talk about this series a lot more in depth, definitely tune into the next episode that's going to be on this channel, which will be This Week in X, where I go super deep into all of Marvel's X-Men line of comic books out this week. Avengers issue number 7 is written by Jason Aaron with line art from Sarah Pichelli, inks by Pichelli and Elisabetta D'Amico, color art from Justin Posner, and letters from Corey Petit. The cover is by Geoff Shaw and Jason Keith. The first arc of Avengers wrapped up in issues 1 through 6. This arc is a throwbacky issue that shows some more of those prehistoric Avengers that we met in Marvel Legacy last fall. Marvel Legacy special from last fall is very much the zero issue to this Avengers series, and if you haven't read it, a lot of this stuff is going to be lost on you. Now the question becomes, did this really need to be an issue of Avengers, right? We were following this prehistoric Ghost Rider as he becomes the Ghost Rider, as he fights a Wendigo and ultimately like finds his spirit animal and gets, not spirit animal, sorry, that's a crappy term that we all need to stop using, but his ride, and ultimately teams up with Odin and the Phoenix in the past. Like, I have trouble with this because we all want to see this Avengers action in the modern day, and it's not super obvious if this prehistoric stuff really matters, and honestly, it just bothers me. Like, prehistoric Avengers, shut up. The Avengers have a very specific purpose, and they're in the modern day, and I don't know that I needed prehistoric versions of all of these characters, so I'm on this. It is, I will say, I know I'm after my minute, but real damn pretty, because Sarah Pichelli is a fantastic artist, but I really have a lot of trouble summoning any kind of interest in this prehistoric Avengers stuff. Maybe down the line, when we see how it connects more to the present day story. It certainly did connect to issues 1 through 6. Maybe then I'll care about these character origins, which I guess are going to be peppered in between each of the present day arcs. Ben Reilly, The Scarlet Spider, number 23, is written by Peter David, with artist Will Sliney, color artist Rachel Rosenberg, and letters from Joe Caramagna. The cover is by Carrie Randolph and Emilio Lopez. I feel like not a lot of you must be reading this series, because I never hear anybody talking about it online, and I feel like I caught up all of it this week, and I feel like I need to tell you some stuff. This is not just Ben Reilly, it's actually like the Clone Spider Club, because it's got Ben Reilly and Kane. They're both in Las Vegas, and they're both kind of trying to deal with who are they now, that the clone conspiracy is over, that they're done it being in the orbit of Peter Parker. And it's actually done some really interesting things and made me care about these characters, which is amazing. But this issue goes off the rails a little bit for me. Peter David has been playing with this idea of Ben Reilly, who's the clone behind some events in Amazing Spider-Man just before this, his soul hanging in the balance, right? We've got Mephisto on one side, quite literally, in Damnation, and we've got, you know, maybe Heavenly Angels on the other side. We have Death in the middle just being like, I'm going to be here no matter what happens to you. This gets a little bit too literal on some of the religious stuff, and it also, like, kind of goes way off on a tangent that's a little bit of a head fake we find out by the end of the issue, so I don't know that, out of time. I don't know that this is a place to jump in. It feels like this series could almost be wrapping up, but there have been a lot of fun issues, especially after the first arc ended. So if you have a little bit of a nostalgia for these 90s clone Spider-Man, it's actually been kind of a fun, under-the-radar series, and I think it's just mislabeled as Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, because it's not really about him being Ben Reilly, or really about the Scarlet Spider. It should just be called probably Scarlet Spiders, because a lot of people don't even know that Kane is in it. Captain America number 3 is written by Ta-Nehisi Coates with line art from Lionel Francis Yu, inks from Jerry Alengulin, colors from Sunny Go, letters from Joe Caramagna, and a cover by Alex Ross. This Captain America series is just, it's really, I'm very taken with it. It is having a conversation that needed to be had about Captain America after Secret Empire and how much trust he has of the nation as their symbol, but also as a superhero, in a way that's also very reflective of what's going on in America today. And this issue goes one further because it combines him with Black Panther, who's usually written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, in a way that says, look, these men are both symbols of their countries, and they're both leaders in their way, but Black Panther has a different outlook because he has a different burden on his shoulders. It's really an issue of 3 sequences. There's a Sharon Carter sequence, there's a sequence of Cap kind of hanging out with a regular Joe American, and then there's a sequence that's a fight that includes Cap, Black Panther, and Okoye, one of my favorite heroes. And it's just an amazing comic book. You has not looked this good in line art for a long time. The inks and the colors here are, and he's always good, are really merging into something great. Yeah, this series, heavy endorsement from me. It's everything we need from Captain America in 2018. Cloak and Dagger issue number 4 is a Comixology original comic book that's offered digital first. It is written by Dennis Hopeless, with pencils from David Messina, inks from Elisabetta D'Amico, colors from Giada Marchisio, and letters from Travis Lanham. The cover is by Mohamed Asrar and Dave McCaig. I really love the first issue of this series, but in issues 2 and 3, it's been doing a lot of back and forth time stuff to insert this retconned antagonist character, Gray. And for me, every time we go into that retcon past, the series really loses me. Not only because I'm not as interested in it, and I don't even think we need it to establish his villainy and their feelings about him, but because it's been really hard to follow in the art if we're in the present or the past, and it's just been a little bit dull for me. This issue finally relieves us of that, because we're very much in the present. We get this confrontation we've been waiting for, not only between Gray and Cloak, but also between Cloak and Dagger. It's satisfying, and it just shows how much punch these characters have together and how much Hopeless knows he can do with them. So I was very happy to get back to this point after 2 issues of really, I thought, flagging quality, and it shows that Cloak and Dagger really deserve to be an ongoing part of the Marvel Universe, and hopefully not all of the stories we're going to see told with them as they come back are stories that are so rooted in revising their origins. Cosmic Ghost Rider number 3 of 5 is written by Donny Cates, with art from Dylan Burnett, color art from Antonio Fabela, letters from Clayton Cowles, and a cover by Geoff Shaw and Antonio Fabela. I hope you're ready for some fan rage here, because I've got some things to say about this issue. Look, I've come to terms with the fact that Donny Cates just comes in and does crazy stuff. It actually feels a lot like Rick Remender from the beginning of his time on Marvel Ongoings, where we knew he was just gonna shake things up every time. And I actually have found the first 2 issues of the series to be very masterful. But this issue wears out one gag over the course of 20 pages, and the gag is based on a really bad read on Cable from the X-Men. Basically him becoming Bishop from what Bishop was doing to Cable in the era after Messiah Complex. It doesn't work for me in the slightest for that character reason, and it just really doesn't understand Cable, and even if it did, it's just like the same sight gag for 20 pages. Like, I was really impressed with Cosmic Ghost Rider number 1. It set up the conundrum of the series in a brilliant way, but if this is just going to be kind of like haha fun gaggy comics, fine. It looks amazing, but it is not worth buying or reading. Wait for it on Marvel Unlimited. Ooh, I went three seconds over, but I had some things to say. Deadpool issue number 4 was written by Scotty Young, with art from Scott Hepburn, color art from Ian Herring, letters from Jeff Eckelberry, and a cover by Nick Klein. I am very taken with this Deadpool Scotty Young series, and I don't always love Deadpool, and I don't always love Scotty Young. But Scotty Young seems to have hit on this perfect center point of Deadpool, where he's vicious, but he's also a little bit sentimental. And you don't need super nice guy Deadpool in order for him to be sentimental. He's just a little bit of a softie. And that really works for me here, because the whole conceit of this new series is that Deadpool wiped his memory, and he can't remember anything that's happened over the past few years that have turned him into such a softie, but we really get back to the fundamentals of what made him an attractive, interesting character. And this issue is a one-and-done bottle issue. The first 3 issues were very funny, but this issue is a little bit more of a bottle episode. And the conceit is that he has to go and do something in Weird World, and that time flows weirdly in Weird World, and so he's there kind of like forever and going through this whole lifetime there, but not really, as he's trying to solve the thing. It's very clever, not as good as the first 3, but still really enjoyable. I never go into a Deadpool series thinking I'm going to love this, and I always wind up being pleasantly surprised when I do, and I've actually probably liked more Deadpool than I haven't liked in the last 5 or 6 years, which is weird, because he was not a character who I really ever particularly enjoyed before Uncanny X-Force and then Dugan and Posen's Deadpool run. So I am very optimistic about this Scotty Young run. I've seen some people online like not really digging it, and I don't get it, but I think we'll talk about that a little bit more, because there's 2 more Deadpool issues, plus a major Deadpool guest appearance to cover in this episode. Death of the Inhumans issue number 3 is written by Donny Cates, with art from Ariel Olivetti, color art from Jordi Belair, and letters from Clayton Cowles. The cover is by Kara Andrews. I'm having trouble figuring out who this series is for. If you're a big fan of the last few series of the Inhumans, I think it's going to be disappointing because it's just a bloodbath. And if you're somebody who's just reading for the story, I don't think the story is very interesting. In terms of this issue, it's very much like a very pale echo of that amazing Eisner-winning Black Bolt series that started in 2017. So this issue plays out those same themes in a really similar way, but it's not 12 issues of amazing greatness. Now, I will say that I do really always like Ariel Olivetti as an artist, and here he's got much less of that high-gloss computer animated look to his stuff. It's much more like traditional pencils as colored by Jordi Belair, and that's fun. And the craft is strong, but I don't really understand 3 issues into this with only a few to go what the purpose of this and like who it's really aimed at, other than just completely dismantling the good work that's been done to make these Inhuman characters interesting and relevant over the past couple of years. Immortal Hulk issue number 5 is written by Al Ewing with pencils from Joe Bennett, inks from Roy Jose, colors from Paul Mounts, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover from Alex Russ. This issue is very much the litmus test for if you're going to continue hanging with the series or not. I personally am a not here. The whole concept of this series is exploring the gamma radiation and Hulk as the monster, as something that's haunting Bruce Banner. And we keep skipping from seeing him, being rooted in him and his narration, and then seeing it from the outside and seeing how monstrous the Hulk really is. Last issue, we also brought in Sasquatch, who has a really similar gamma radiation history, and this issue is very much a throwdown between them. I like the throwdown, but the thing that resulted was kind of taking this monster of the week aspect of Hulk and the haunting aspect of the gamma radiation, but making it like a literal haunting, saying like there's something from Banner's past that's really hanging on, not only to him, but to the gamma radiation. And it just didn't work for me. It was one of those things that was, I think, supposed to be like a big serious reveal, and I kind of went, which is the wrong reaction. So in terms of a litmus test, apparently I failed. So I know a lot of people, my minute's up clearly. I know a lot of people who are really enjoying this Hulk series. It's something very different for Hulk, but I think it's something that tunes into a lot of the themes of Hulk that people really enjoy. And so from that perspective, yeah, it's great. But it just is really not hitting for me, but I think you got to see for yourself, and this would be the issue to find out. Old Man Logan Annual 1 is written by Ed Brisson, with art from Simone DeMeo, color art from Dano Sanchez Almada, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover by Shane Davis, Michelle Delecky, and Val Staples. There's also a backup story in this issue that has a different creative team, not written by Ed Brisson. This is very much a Punisher story. It's set in the Old Man Logan future, so it's in continuity for our character, Old Man Logan, but it's not in the middle of the current continuity of the present-day events in the series, which ultimately makes it very skippable. But at the same time, it makes it very pick-upable if you're somebody who likes the future Old Man Logan or the idea of an old man Punisher. It very much deals with something that I think is really relevant to the Punisher character, which is that do people who are fans of the Punisher understand what he stands for? You know, it's easy to see the violence, the bullets, the vigilantism, but do you get his motivation and why he does that? And this explores this Old Man Logan future with all the post-apocalyptic gangs. And the idea is that maybe the people who have gone on to adore the Punisher don't really understand the why of him. And this finds Old Man Logan, you know, after his confrontations in that Old Man Logan original story, intersecting with that gang and ultimately with Frank Castle. Quicksilver No Surrender number 5, which is the last issue of this series, is written by Saladin Ahmed, with art from Eric Nguyen, color art from Rico Renzi, letters from Clayton Cowles, and a cover from Martin Simmons. This series, the whole concept is that Quicksilver is frozen in a moment of time that occurred in Avengers No Surrender, and we see why he disappeared there and if he's ever going to come back. It has allowed for Ahmed to do some really interesting dissections of Quicksilver's character. A little bit of minor repair on his continuity, but also trying to explain to us his motivation. We always know him as this very surly character who doesn't have time for everybody, but it turns out that his motivation is a little bit deeper than that. However, there are aspects of this that just really I have trouble working. It almost wants you to buy into the idea of the Speed Force at Marvel, like the Marvel version of that, and it also plays with him being stuck in time, and yet time is going by in the present day, but he's defending people in the present day from things that are happening to them in the no time, but then in the present day, time is passing for them. Maybe I just read it a little too quickly, but I don't know. I really had trouble with the concept of it, and ultimately, aside from some of that repair to the character, it didn't really take me anywhere. So I think this was for Quicksilver superfans. It was okay, but it wasn't as great as some of the other stuff that we've seen from Saladin Ahmed at Marvel. Secret Agent Deadpool #1 is a new Deadpool limited series. It is written by Christopher Hastings with art from Salva Espen, color art from Matt Yaki, letters from Jimmy Betancourt, and a cover by David Nakayama. This is one of those like low-grade, okay Deadpool series where there's a concept and then an execution. It just doesn't have quite all of that Deadpool heart that I was alluding to earlier. It's definitely got his viciousness. And, I mean, the whole concept is, what if Deadpool went head-to-head with somebody who was kind of a James Bond or Archer sort of character, and ultimately, how would Deadpool do in their shoes? I think there's a lot of interesting things to come, and Hastings is a very clever, funny writer. He wrote all of Gwenpool, which was amazing, highly recommended front to back. And so this is a very setup-y issue, but it just felt to me like it was missing a little bit of that heart of Deadpool. So the people who are really into him, just like yuck, 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 shoot, 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 are probably actually going to really dig it. And it advertises itself as like a good entry point for Deadpool. I don't know why you would say that when you have the brand new Scotty Young series, which is like literally the perfect entry point for Deadpool. But, you know, if you want to read like a lightweight, more cartoony take on Deadpool, this is a good place to be. Next up is Silver Surfer Annual 1, which is really just a one-shot because he does not have an ongoing series right now. This issue is written by Ethan Sachs with art from Andre Lima Araujo, colors from Chris O'Halloran, letters from Travis Lanham, and a cover by Philip Tan and Marta Gracia. You hear me say a lot, especially when it comes to these single issues, right? Was this story a story that needed to be told? Like, not only did the author have a need to tell it, but did we have a need to hear it? And not in terms of if it matters in continuity or not, but like, is it significant? Is it worthy? Does it make you feel something? This issue ticks all of those boxes for me. It's utterly gorgeous. It's clearly a tribute to Stan Lee and Mobius. Before you even read the note at the end, it's just obvious. And it neatly fits as a bottle episode into Silver Surfer's continuity moments before he first appears in Fantastic Four, but it doesn't really matter if you know that or care about that because it's an interesting story on its own. It has to do with him as a herald deciding what planet lives or dies, and that the things that are on the surface of that decision might not represent the full humanity or insectanity or whatever of the people on that planet. I was fascinated by this issue. It's stunningly illustrated. If you're a Silver Surfer fan, I think you absolutely need to go and pick it up. Spider-Man Deadpool issue number 38 was written by Robbie Thompson with pencils from Jim Toe, inks from Sean Parsons, Livesay, and Cam Smith, and Craig Young, colors from Brian Reber, and letters from Joe Sabino. The cover is by Dave Johnson. This is another one of those series that I caught up on entirely this week, and so I feel like I have a whole lot to say, more than I could go in a minute. But what you really need to know is that, aside from a couple of fill-ins, this series has mostly been written first by Joe Kelly in the first 18 issues, and now by Robbie Thompson. And they both ultimately are exploring what it means to be Deadpool and what it means to be Spider-Man, and how they're alike and dissimilar. The first half is much more about Spider-Man, to me, and the second half is much more about Deadpool. And the second half actually kind of ended on issue 36, and issue 37 and 38 is a new story that takes off from that second half, but also brings in some of the themes of the first half in terms of, if we understand who Spider-Man and Deadpool are, what does it mean for them to be together? What are they for a unit? That all sounds really interesting, right? That said, I have a lot of trouble recapping this issue. I've read it now 3 times, and all I can tell you is they're in the Savage Land and like hijinks ensue. It's not a great single issue. I don't think you should pick up here. I don't even think you should pick up on issue 37. If you want to read this title, start from the beginning of the Robbie Thompson stuff, which I really enjoyed. It's got that Deadpool violence plus heart. Thanos Legacy #1 one-shot is written by Donny Cates with art from Brian Lovell, color art from Jordan Boyd, and letters from VC's Clayton Cowles. The cover is by frequent Donny Cates collaborator Geoff Shaw. There's also a backup story in this issue by a different creative team. This is tricky to explain. It picks up Thanos back from where he was in his Thanos Wins arc of his series that Donny Cates wrote. It also is adjacent to the events of Infinity Wars, which is the current Marvel event. And Thanos comes back from that Thanos Wins future with a thought in his mind that he's going to like cancel out that particular future, but still wind up winning. And so this issue shows him beginning to take those steps and how they don't all work out for him. I don't want to say too much else other than to spoil it. It also is a pretty interesting, mostly silent backup story with Thanos and Gamora. If you didn't read Donny Cates' Thanos Wins, you don't need to read this. It's not enough about Infinity Wars, that it's essential for that, and I just don't feel like it's going to be satisfying if you have not read that Thanos Wins arc. Venom, First Host, issue number 2, is written by Mike Costa with pencils from both Mark Bagley and Ron Lim, inks from Andrew Hennessy and Scott Hanna, colors from Dano Sanchez-Amara, letters from Clayton Cowles, and a cover by Mark Bagley and Richard Eisenhove. This series depends a lot on if you read the Mike Costa Venom ongoing, aside from its interruptions from Cullen Bunn, and also how much patience you have for this idea of Venom as this like intergalactic concept that's tied into a lot of other Marvel intergalactic races in a way that we have never seen before, but has always existed. My beef is that it's monkeying a little bit with the Kree-Skrull War, which is one of the classics of Marvel continuity, but it's in a gentle way, and a way that I can really appreciate. And it looks great. It's really fun to see Mark Bagley and Ron Lim drawing Deadpool when they drew so much Deadpool in the 90s that looked so good. Ultimately, I feel like this is a little MacGuffin-y. Like, the fight is a little ping-pongy. We see the same strategy used back and forth like 3 or 4 times, and then the double cross that gets us to the end also feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's taking us to an interesting place. So this series is coming out weekly right now, which kind of feels like a dump. Like maybe Costa had been planning this all along and Marvel kind of felt bad and like was like, okay, you can have a 5-issue series. We'll just dump it right before the Venom movie. But that means you can have 5 issues in quick succession and really enjoy them. So if you're into this stuff, strap in and enjoy. I don't know that it's really essential for a Venom fan. And Donny Cates is doing some wild stuff in the main Venom ongoing right now. Weapon X number 23 is written by Greg Pak and Fred Van Lent with art from Yildiray Cinar, colors from Frank Dermata, letters from Joe Caramagna, and a cover by Raza. This is the second of a 2-issue arc which features a new Weapon X. All of the sympathetic good guy hero type characters that were in this before are gone. And it's a team led by Sabretooth with the likes of Mystique, Lady Deathstrike, and Omega Red on it. And that's a lot of fun. This issue, however, is taken over by a guest appearance by none other than Deadpool. And he just swallows the entire issue. It's fun, but we're so early in this new iteration of the team, this more villainous, mercenary version of the team, that it feels like in a second issue to throw Deadpool in was a little much. But Deadpool is part of this legacy of Weapon X characters. Who knows? Maybe he's going to join the team, although I don't really get the feeling that he's going to be based out of the X-Office anytime soon. So ultimately, if you want to pick this up, you could start with the last issue, but I actually think the arc that came before that was much more interesting, and it establishes why we've taken this more villainous swing with the team. So that would really be the place to go, unless you're a big Deadpool fan, in which case, yeah, pick this issue up because it's a lot of fun Deadpool stuff. Our final issue of the week, X-Men Gold number 35, was written by Mark Guggenheim, with art from Simone Bonfantino and Giovanni Valletta, colors from Eric Arciniega, letters from Corey Petit, and a cover by Phil Noto. So this past few issues of X-Men Gold have been dealing with Storm going back to her family village in Africa, where she encounters the idea that there is a new god there. She used to be the goddess of these people with her mutant powers. And this new god, maybe he's a godlike entity, maybe he's just powered by their belief, but he's evil and he has bad things planned. And can Storm stand up to that? The thing is, it's a little bit of like a weak echo of the plot of the second mega arc of Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther that started with issue 13, where we got pretty much verbatim the same God's plot, just not, it was for Wakanda instead of where Storm grew up. We do see some of the other X-Cast kind of come in here, but it looks good, but it ultimately is just like a very like, okay, that happened story. Maybe somebody's going to pick up the threads of it and show us how Storm is now more connected to her heritage and her childhood, but until we see that, that, I don't know how significant it really is. If you want to hear me talk a lot more about this, please tune into the next episode that's going to be on this channel, which is This Week in X, which has a much deeper discussion of Storm in this story and what it means for Storm as one of a line of recently fallen leaders of the X-Men. As you've maybe been able to hear, I'm losing my voice a little bit, which is not just down to how much talking this is, I'm actually just feeling a little bit under the weather, so we're going to try to do these last two things pretty quickly before it's just silence and me miming my opinions. I will say, you've heard me be pretty down on some of these books this week. Those opinions were formed before my voice was being lost. Some of them really just didn't work for me, and it's kind of no fun when they're all clustered together in the middle because I'm like, oh, now I've got to like be mean about 3 issues in a row. But it's meant to be my frank reaction, and that was my reaction to some of these issues. But now let's get to the positive. So I've got 1 minute to give you a pick of the week, the one single issue that I think is must read, and then 1 minute to tell you what you absolutely must catch up on. So here is pick of the week, and I don't have it already picked. I'm looking at the list of issues right now. You know, Asgardians of the Galaxy, interesting start, but I have some concerns about that, and the colors were a little Captain America, great, but I don't know if as a standalone issue it was like the most amazing. I think I gotta go with that Silver Surfer annual. It just had so much heart, and it's hard to make you care as a reader when you know you're in a disposable issue. Like, you know that this is a plot that's not going to be significant because it happened decades ago in continuity and nobody's ever referenced it and it doesn't really explain anything. And yet for it to feel so powerful and feel like it says something so core to what Silver Surfer is and who he is, and for it to look so good, that's significant. So maybe we're going to see more from this team. I hope we will, because the issue was outstanding and it's head and shoulders above everything else from Marvel this week. So now let's do what to catch up on. And, you know, part of this is I sit down with, you know, Comixology and Marvel Unlimited and catch up digitally in all these series. So I'm ready to tell you about them because I'm not buying them physically. This counts towards my minute, this little prologue. So I've got a split decision this week. Captain America by Ta-Nehisi Coates, issue number 3 of this week. It's just incredible. Like, I know I kind of already said this in the minute, but the conversation feels so present and grounded in the current time. And if you're saying, get politics out of my comic books, then why are you reading Captain America comic books to begin with? He's always been political. And this is political without preaching. I don't think it needs to preach because it's revealing something, and it's more powerful to me to reveal something than to preach something. That said, I was so surprised by Spider-Man Deadpool and this Robbie Thompson run in it. It's not just Spider-Man and Deadpool. The supporting cast has Mockingbird, Husk, Silk, Amphibian, 2 sharks that communicate psychically, Screwball. It's just an amazing yeah, I really liked it. I never would have thought that Spider-Man Deadpool would be up my alley, but reading it from the beginning of Robbie Thompson up to present, really satisfying. So it kind of depends on if you wanted a short read, because Captain America, you only really need to read 2 other issues to catch up, or a longer read, because you can really sit down, and it's a lot of it's on Marvel Unlimited. You could just sit down and kick back and read a lot of Deadpool, a lot of which had art from Chris Bachalo, which I come and go on, but he was really fun, entertaining mode, Chris Bachalo, in this particular Deadpool series. That's all we've got for you for Marvel in a Minute. All we've got in terms of comic books, opinions, and voice. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is still a pretty new show for me, so I'm really welcoming your feedback. I'm always welcoming your feedback, but especially if you have feedback about what I could be doing to give you a better idea about what's going on with Marvel in a minute. Let me know below in a comment, and the best way to let me know that you want more content like this on this channel is to like and to subscribe to the channel. Not because that's just what everybody says at the end of YouTube videos, but because it tells me with data that you're tuned in. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to everything I have to say about Marvel in a Minute, presented by Crushing Comics. Take care.